All right, looks like we're live. Um, there's a few more people joining us. So I'll go ahead and get started introducing Cheyenne Marling. She's our business continuity staffing consultant on a global level. She prepares lots of data for reports throughout the BC industry. So, she looks at, compensation packages, some of those salary insights, and she can speak to that on this call. But without further ado, Cheyenne, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Keith. Well, welcome to today's presentation. I just realized the only thing I didn't update was the date. So obviously the date is a different day. But wanted to take the opportunity to talk to you about some really pro tips as you're going about your career search. And I'm going to make this I'm going to kind of tailor this a little bit to the audience today on things to consider, especially making the transition from the public to private sector. So a lot of information to go through, so I'm going to kind of fly through this, but the slide deck will be shared with everyone because there are some links embedded in the presentation, so it'll just be easier that way. A little bit about me. So yes, I have been working in this industry since '98. I fell into the industry during Y2K planning. I've always been a recruiter, headhunter for the industry, and when I fell into it in 1998, I loved the profession. I loved everyone's passion. Just their how motivated they were, with their roles, their jobs. It was so much more interesting to speak to back then business continuity, disaster recovery versus a Java programmer. So I took it upon myself to really take my career in this direction. I started a company by the name of BC Management in March of 2000. Now that company doesn't technically exist anymore. But we still keep the social pages, the website up and running. But a little bit about myself, again, 25 years experience. I am based in Southern California, but I was raised in Wisconsin. So I'm a huge Packer Badger fan. Mom of two. I have one son at Boulder, and then I have a daughter that's going to be graduating next year. And for those who follow me on LinkedIn, I do those running videos, and I really just take my phone and just start recording and hope it works, and usually it does. So if you don't follow me, I encourage you to look me up, follow me. I like to post videos on what's going on with the trends, the industry, jobs, how to go about your career search. So they're usually, quick 2-3 minute videos. A little bit about the company I work with. Like I said, BC Management technically does not exist as an organization anymore. But if you look through these bullet points, I'm now part of Whittle Bryans. And Whittle Bryans is a consulting company. They're better known for their public sector work, debris cleanup. In fact, they're responding to the Key Bridge response as well at the moment. So, but I'm a part of the corporate resilience consulting team. So our clients are, corporate entities, all the way from small to large. Currently, my team is helping Honeywell, MetLife, Meta, but even smaller organizations as well with their business continuity, crisis, resilience management planning. If you look at these last two bullet points, I manage the research and analytics and the staff augmentation and recruiting. So I still operate in the same capacity I have for the last 25 years. From a staffing perspective, I do help our clients with contract to hire, direct hire, from entry level all the way up to senior heads of program. Even though I'm based in California, I do recruit across the US as well as worldwide. So covering EMEA, Asia Pacific, South America, North America, Americas, as well as Middle East. Not too much work in Africa, but I do have candidates in over 90 countries. And I should mention that I only stick within anything under the resiliency umbrella. So my core is business continuity, disaster recovery, crisis management, occasionally emergency management or supplier resiliency, cyber risk oversight. But really my core is BCDR, crisis management. Now for today's presentation, we're going to talk about your career search strategy. Definitely things you should consider, especially making the transition from the public to private sector. We're also going to talk about some resume writing tips. I'm going to showcase 2 different resumes of what to do and what not to do with your resume. Don't forget your social media profile, because that's really the first impression. I guarantee you all of my clients, once they get a resume, they go look you up. right? And they want to make sure that your resume matches what's out there on your social profile. We're going to go through some tips on interview preparation, and then we're going to wrap it up with some final kind of career tips and some resources that I'm going to share. Now, when you look at your career search strategy, it's really important to have a documented process. So you're following through you have a purpose, and every day you're going through and you're putting together your budgeting or documenting, putting a calendar time to make sure that you're going through these specific efforts. So when you think about your career search strategy, document before you get started what matters to you, because you can quickly start interviewing with an organization and you're excited that they want you and they want you part of their organization. But if that company or that role or that team or that hiring manager or the culture, if it doesn't map to what you're really looking for with an opportunity, what's really going to make you happy, you're going to find yourself, not making a good decision and taking an offer that may not be the best opportunity for you. So take the opportunity to really think about what's going to work best with your family situation, what type of opportunity, the industry, the culture of the organization, what kind of hiring manager you want to be working with, the role. When you think about roles and industries to target, this is where it really, and I can't stress this enough, if you're looking to make that transition from the public to private sector, what I've seen is that's going to be most successful and where you, generally speaking, your skill sets might be more marketable within the corporate world is a crisis management role. So if you're coming into the corporate world, they tend to view professionals coming from the public sector as having a really good background in dealing with crises, disasters. So having that real world experience is really beneficial. It increases your marketability because you tend to have a better skill set in respect to that versus someone who's done more corporate planning or governance of a program. So think about, if you're not already tailoring your search or looking that keyword crisis management, you should definitely start doing so. And there's a lot of keywords that you need to be looking up when you're doing your search, as far as not just crisis management, but business continuity, emergency management, resiliency, specifically industries to target. When you think about business continuity and resiliency, there are quite a few industries that it's going to be more of a challenge to break into because of the regulations that those organizations want you to be familiar with. So specifically the financial, healthcare, those tend to be very challenging to break into, even for those individuals who have done corporate planning. If they've been within healthcare, they even have a challenge breaking into the financial industry sector because of all the regulations are usually required. Not always the case for every role, but something to consider, especially if you see those regulations on the job description. You know that they're going to be interviewing for that. And if they have a pool of candidates where, let's say 10 candidates have a great background in those regulations, they're going to opt to move forward with those 10 candidates and maybe not be as responsive to the other individuals in the pool that have applied. So just something to consider when you target your job search. Really think about the role and think about the industry that you're targeting as well. Now, if you look at scheduling, like I said, time daily, don't beat yourself up. Think about it as a documented process that you have, 2 hours a day or whatever it may be, that you have scheduled time to look through the jobs that are posted, set up notifications so you have things sent to you automatically on a daily basis. And I always like to tell people that it's so important to network. So look to see what your network on LinkedIn is posting as well. But when you subscribe to jobs, I usually subscribe to LinkedIn. Indeed is really good. And I definitely recommend to go to the IAEM website because there will be private organizations that will post on there as well. And they tend to be those job postings tend to be more emergency crisis management focused. So something to consider. And definitely track your activities. This is so crucial because definitely put together a document on the name of the company that you send your resume to. If you have a contact person that you sent your resume to, the link to the job description, the date that you applied or inquired on the job, and then activity. So did you get a response? Did you get an automated response? And then what I like to do, because I also track jobs and try to get opportunities for our candidates. So even though I've been doing this for 25 years, I'm not sitting back and waiting for the jobs to come to me. I'm actively prospecting every day to get opportunities. So I also track that, the job links. And what I do is 8 weeks after I check in, I go back to that job link to see if it's still open. So after 8 weeks, if you haven't heard, if it is still an open opportunity, I would suggest to try to perhaps at that time look on LinkedIn and see who you can probably contact, who might be a good person or good point of contact to inquire about the opening. I'm sure there's a ton of questions, so we'll have to get to them at the end as well, but I don't want to overlook that as well. And be positive through the process. Don't beat yourself up, because I'm a firm believer that everything works out for a reason. So if you don't hear back from a company, if you don't hear back from a hiring manager, it doesn't mean that you are, you don't have the, it doesn't mean that you are a poor candidate or an individual that is, it's all about matching the right opportunity. And I like to equate it as sometimes even dating, even though it's something that many of us have done for a long time probably, but if you go through a dating process, you may not hear back from someone. You always wonder, well, why didn't I hear back from them? It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that opportunity or that relationship wasn't meant to be. It's the same. I like to think of it as the same thing for job opportunities, because there is an expansive pool of candidates, and it really comes down to the culture. Sometimes the job description is not written very well either. So you may think that they're looking for a certain skill set, but in reality, they're not. So there's a lot of unknowns to the process. So definitely don't beat yourself up, and be positive. And every day think of it as, I'm going to reach out to 10 or 20 new opportunities. I'm going to network and find new people to add to my network on LinkedIn. I'm going to start communicating and joining groups. So think of it as a numbers game where you're doing reach out and you're scheduling that time, and be positive through the process. Now, going on to resume writing tips, a lot of things to consider, right? When you're putting together a resume, definitely keep it concise. Think about the formatting where it's easy for the person to read, to digest. It gets their attention when they're looking at your resume as well. So the formatting is really important, because if it's too wordy, if it's too hard to comprehend, it's going to lose their attention and they're going to move on to something else. Because when they're looking at a resume, they're scanning, they're looking for the keywords, right? So I'm going to share an example in a couple slides here on what to do and what not to do when you think about the formatting process. Now, when you write your resume, it's really, really important to sell yourself and put down not only your responsibilities, but then what did you accomplish? Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Did you implement a program ahead of schedule? Did you save the company money? Did you pass an audit? Did you think about specific crisis management skills that you accomplished in your previous role? So think about the things that you can document and you can put into your resume. Think of action phrases, and definitely speak to metrics, because companies like to see, what have you done? What makes you different from the other candidates? And how is your experience going to help to elevate the maturity of their program as well? So definitely action statements, metrics, and think about your specific accomplishments. Now, it's really important to also tailor your resume to your target job, and think about the terminology. And this is where it's really, I can't even say this enough, it's really frustrating for me in this industry, because there is so many different terms that we use. We have resilience management, we have business continuity, we have disaster recovery, crisis management, emergency management. Sprinkle in all of those terms, but definitely if you're focused on more of a crisis management position, then make sure that your resume definitely communicates your crisis management expertise. Because when they're scrolling through and quickly glancing at your resume, and I can't even stress this enough, they want to see that you have more of that crisis management experience versus business continuity. So it's really helpful to maybe have two different resumes, one that's more crisis management focused, emergency preparedness, and then maybe another one that's more highlights the business continuity or COOP with your background as well. I actually do the same thing with a lot of my candidates who have a good balance of ITDR and business continuity. So if they're looking for a role, and my hiring managers have done this so many times where they will turn down a candidate because they think the person is too DR focused, too technology focused. And they do the vice versa. If it's a business continuity position or an ITDR, they may think the person's too business continuity focused. So if you're kind of a blend of two different disciplines, you're going to want to have potentially even maybe 3 resumes, one that's more focused on one discipline, another one that's more focused on a second discipline, and then another one that's equally blended between the two, because there are obviously roles that could be blended between the two as well. So definitely something to consider. And you know, as you send out your resume, go through the job description to determine which resume is going to be best for that. At the same time, don't be, you want to make sure that your resume is accurate with your experience. Don't put anything false or anything, because when you interview, that's going to come out through the process as well. And then obviously make sure to consider all of your skills as you put together your resume, hard and soft. So hard are things that you can easily quantify. You can be tested on those hard skills. For example, with the CBCP certification, we'll specifically test on your skills of going through a BIA and testing a plan or program. But you also, what a lot of people overlook are the soft skills, situational awareness, emotional intelligence. Now, you're not just going to put on your resume that you have situational awareness, but you're going to highlight a particular responsibility or accomplishment that demonstrates situational awareness or demonstrates emotional intelligence, demonstrates leadership skills, right? Public speaking, presenting. So think through your resume that is highlighting both of those hard and soft skills as well. Now, here are some resume writing mistakes. Weak word choice. So I'm a big person that whenever I send anything out or put together a document, I like to go through the source and try to find different words or stronger words. So definitely, you know, read through and think about how you can switch some of those words out and try to avoid the weaker words. Again, it gets down to those action words as well. Too much information. People usually say to have your resume be, you know, 2-3 pages. At the same time, you want to show growth in your career. It's usually don't want to go back more than 10 years. Okay, it's not an age thing. It's really, once you go beyond 10 years, is that experience 10 plus years back, is it really relevant to the job you're trying to get now? You want your resume to demonstrate your skills as it applies to the job that you are focused on getting at the moment. So if you were an administrative assistant, you know, 10 plus years ago, is it really relevant to put on your resume if you're going for a job that is more business continuity or resilience management focused? So think about it from that perspective. I do have a few candidates that if they earlier on in their career, right, or they're early in their career, excuse me, that they have that experience that's quote unquote not very relevant to what they're targeting, but it's still something that they should put on their resume to show that they have been working, right? So what I suggest in that point is have less information that is highlighting that specific job or your role that you had, because if it's not relevant, you don't want to have as many bullet points. You really want to expand on your current roles as they apply to the job you're trying to target. And then also definitely check for any misspellings, grammatical errors. This is typically easier to do now with, you know, spell check and what have you, but definitely focus on, you know, those kind of key words of your and you are. So, you know, scan through and look for those specific common misspellings or grammatical errors in your resume. Have other people look at it, because once you're in your resume too much and you're kind of focused on it, you can get a bit tunnel vision. So definitely have multiple people look through it as well. Double check all dates. I can't even stress this enough, because human resources, they tend to look through and see if there's any gaps. So double check to make sure the dates, the years are accurate. And also definitely look at formatting. I'm a big person that if you have one date a little bit in and another date that's on the very right end of the resume or the paper, you want to make sure that everything's adjusted and flows and everything is formatted correctly through the resume as well. Same with the font, if it's italic or bold, so double check all of that. And again, like I mentioned before, never lie, never misrepresent your skill sets, because it will come out in an interview. I can't stress that enough. And also make sure that you remove anything, like I mentioned before, kind of that irrelevant information that could be old or it doesn't apply to the job that you're really interviewing for. Now, this next slide is a great representation of exactly what I've been talking to with the formatting. So you can see the one on the left side, it's just so much information. You get lost. You almost don't even want to look at it anymore. The second one has a better flow. It gets your attention. It has a tagline on top. The only thing I want to highlight here with the one on the right side is this sample resume is easily 10 plus years old, okay? Because it doesn't have anything about resiliency or some of the new terms we use today. It doesn't really highlight crisis management. But I love this sample resume because it's really easy to digest for the reader. It's really easy to scan. You have that tagline. You have a very brief kind of introduction, a little short kind of a summary of your qualifications, but then you have the key skill areas. Now you think about key skill areas, again, think about the different terms of crisis management, resilience, but also think about, again, those action things that you've done. Have you developed a program? Have you activated during an event? Have you had to roll out a training program? What are your leadership skills? Some of those soft skills as well. This is a great area or space to kind of highlight that to get the reader's immediate attention. And then the one thing that this resume doesn't quite do well, but could do better, is under professional experience, as you put the company, the date, your job title, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, responsibilities, and then you could easily have accomplishments under there as well. Now it's kind of mixed in, but I almost like to have, underneath the bullet points of responsibilities, then put accomplishments, bullet point as well. Now moving forward, let's see. Social media, definitely never forget your social media. It's so important. It's going to be your first impression. They're going to look it up. So it's something you can't avoid. Your LinkedIn profile should definitely mirror your resume. And you should also make sure, it also highlights your involvement in the profession. If you're actively posting, if you're actively commenting, if you're liking, it shows that you are engaged with others on the platform, which companies like to see. But keep in mind, they will also see if you posted anything that's not business focused. So keep it business. Understand it's not a political platform. They don't want to see you voicing opinions or what have you, because they want to make sure that when you come in, that the business, you can conduct yourself in a professional manner. So when you come to work, you will also conduct yourself in a professional manner. Show your personal brand, your uniqueness. When you go to LinkedIn, there's a tagline. So when they're doing a search, they can see the picture, the tagline. It gets their attention. It shows kind of who you are, your personal brand. And then underneath there's a about section about you. It gives you an opportunity to tell your story outside of your quote unquote work experience. It also opens up the opportunities for you to network, for you to find those opportunities, and to professionally learn from others. Now, what do employers see when they go to LinkedIn? They obviously want to see a professional photo. If you don't have a photo, it makes it look as if you're not open to networking. You may not be responsive to job opportunities if they try to reach out to you. So professional photo is so important. And if you are actively looking for a job, make sure you have on there that kind of like that green that you're open to work. And then if you have a network and you're responsive and you're open to networking and open to a LinkedIn friend request, they're going to assume that you're going to be more open to opportunities if a recruiter reaches out to you on a job. If you don't have that photo, if you don't seem to be open to networking or open to work, they're less likely to reach out to you because they only have so many quote unquote emails or friend requests that they can do. If they send out too many, they're going to have a stop limit put on them. I've actually had that happen to me. So I'm very selective on who I reach out to now, because otherwise you could not have the opportunity to send out any more friend requests until you start having people accept yours. So very, very important to think about. Again, employers see your personality or your uniqueness with your tagline, your about section. And it also, again, like I mentioned, definitely shows your engagement in the profession as well. Now, interview preparation is so important, and some interview do's: definitely prepare, research the company, the hiring manager, the opportunity, reference specific examples and use metrics. So when you interview, and this is a great example actually, and I have companies mention this all the time. If you're asked, tell me about your experience in doing a BIA, okay? And you can start off talking about a BIA, but before you know it, you get into a tangent. You want to use specific examples, but give enough information, but not too much information where you're losing their attention. Here's an example of not giving enough information, where a person will answer, I love doing BIAs. I do BIAs all the time. And it makes the interviewer think, do they really know what a BIA is? Okay, so you want to use specific examples, use metrics, but keep on point and keep it concise, because if you go off on a tangent, they may have other questions they want to ask you, and they're not having the opportunity to do so, and they're inevitably going to start to think about their next meeting around the corner, or perhaps their next interview. So don't lose their attention, use metrics, and be specific. Again, think about your hard skills and soft skills that you can match to that role. And this really comes down to looking at the job description and paying attention to what they're asking you as far as interview questions. So you can kind of, make sure that when you're answering the question that you're highlighting perhaps your situational awareness. You're highlighting how you went through an exercise and how did you go about that process, and what was your takeaway? What did you learn? Specific examples again. Like I mentioned before, read your audience and be very mindful of the time that is allotted for the interview as well. And show genuine interest and enthusiasm for the role. This is incredibly important, because this is one of the biggest reasons why candidates are turned down for a job. If their skill set is a match and everything else, the compensation and what have you. I have known so many hiring managers to pass on a candidate because they simply don't close the interview. But it's not necessarily closing your sale. It's not a sales pitch. It's really showing your genuine interest. So saying, thank you so much, John, for taking the time to talk to me about the job. I am so excited about the opportunity, and highlight what you spoke about. Why are you excited about the opportunity? Why are you excited about the company? Why are you excited about the culture? Anything that they brought to your attention during the interview, make sure you summarize why you're interested, what you can bring to the table, and that you are certainly interested in moving forward in the process. What might be the next step in the interview process? I'm very excited to move forward. So that's essentially closing the interview. I can guarantee you, if someone who's equally qualified who does that and you don't, you may likely be passed on the job and you don't even know why you were passed. And it happens more than you can believe. Now, when we think about the interview don'ts, okay? Don't dominate the conversation. Again, they have questions they want to get to, and this comes down to thinking about the time that's allotted. So be concise, give enough information, be specific, but read your audience and don't dominate the conversation. Avoid tangents. Again, if they're talking about a BIA, don't start off and talk about a BIA and then go to exercising the program and go to program updates. You want to keep on topic of whatever they're asking you at that moment. Never lie about your background, never misrepresent yourself, but also don't be negative, okay? And this can even be as simple as, usually people think about it's being negative about a past company, or you don't like doing a specific task. But it also can come down to closing the interview and saying, hey, John, thanks so much for taking the time. Is there anything that my background's missing for this opportunity? Because even that shows that you're kind of lacking that, you still have perhaps enthusiasm, but you're also doubting that you might not be the best fit. So anything negative, because you don't want the interviewer to walk away and go, I really like that candidate, but that person did not have experience doing ABC, even though it may not be a big part of the job. So keep out the negativity at all costs. And don't overdo it. Again, it comes down to being who you are and just having that genuine excitement and being your personal self. But don't try to be, it's a careful balance, because you don't want to seem too desperate for the job. You want to think as if you're coming in as a consultant. You're putting on your consultant hat, and you're thinking, what does this company need to be successful with their program? What kind of person they want to hire for their role? You're coming in and you're letting them know how your experience can help them get there. So when you come in kind of a consultative mindset, it's a little bit easier to not be too anxious or overzealous in the process. And again, like I mentioned, definitely make sure you're not lacking initiative. Make sure that you're genuinely excited. You're having that conversation. Like, this could be, potentially a great hire manager that you're working with in the future. So they want to hire someone that they want to work with, someone who's really passionate about the industry, someone who really enjoys what they do. So make sure as you're going through that process and interviewing that you're communicating, you're demonstrating, you're showing energy and that genuine interest and excitement for the role. Now, when you think about some of those awkward questions, you definitely, I'm not going to go through specific examples, but definitely be prepared to answer these kind of awkward questions. So think about how you would answer each of these questions, and think about and practice in front of a mirror as well in going through the process of answering these questions. Now, compensation, I'm going to pause here. Many states will not allow employers to ask about your current compensation. They can ask what you're looking for, but in many cases, they're not allowed to ask you about compensation or what you're currently earning. At the same time, when you see a job posted out there and now they're starting to post compensation ranges, just know that even the top of the range might be posted. They usually 95% of the time, they cannot get there. Okay, I cannot even stress how important this is. When the compensation range is posted, they can target up to the midpoint. That's usually the max, because even though that job is budgeted at that range, they need to make sure that they bring you in at the midpoint so you can get those performance reviews and get your compensation increases in the future as well. So very, very important, because I can't tell you how many companies, now that they're posting their compensations, that they have the offers turned down over and over again. So just a little hidden fact that if you see it out there, it's typically up to the midpoint, and that's what they're going to be looking for. So if you see that out there and you know what your compensation range is, be very leery of responding to a job if you know it's going to be outside of your range, because you're just wasting your time and their time when you can be really spending your time in interviewing for jobs that are really going to be a true fit for what you're looking for. Now, lastly here, also think about, this question's a big one. Where do you want to be in 5 years? AKA, how long are you going to stay? So think about how you're going to answer these awkward questions. I know everyone's going to get the slide deck so you can practice them on your own time. The questions you should definitely ask. Ask the hiring manager, what attracted you to the company? In the next 6 months, what would you like this new hire to accomplish? This is a great question because it gives you insight to where the program is. It gives you insight into the true responsibilities outside of what's posted on the job description, but it also gives you an opportunity to sell yourself on how your experience can help them get there with their program. Now, obviously, you want to have, when you think about questions you want to ask, you're going to have to give the opportunity for the interviewer to ask their questions first. But when it opens up at the end, do you have any questions you'd like to ask? I suggest having, maybe 3, or probably not 5, but probably 3 questions that you want to ask. And some of them they may have already answered. So then you can kind of cross those off your list, but have them in order of priority, knowing that you may not get to all of them, okay? If you are working with an internal or external recruiter, some of those questions might be better served to ask that particular individual instead of the hiring manager. From your perspective, what does success look like or mean in this role? That's another good question. This I love, the last question, specifically for business continuity or resilience. What values do you see in the company's leadership that have contributed to your success? Okay, that gives you insight into how much the leadership values business continuity, resilience management, and how important it is to the organization as a whole, to the culture. So that's a great question to ask, because it will give you insight into, truly how committed is the leadership to resilience management planning. Now, when you think about questions to avoid asking, you should know what the company is doing, because you should have done your research. You should also never ask about how long it will take for you to be promoted, because immediately they're going to think you're going to be bored in the position and you're going to want to move on. So these are definitely questions that you want to avoid. The last one, flexibility, work from home. If most jobs right now are hybrid, there are very few that are 100% remote. So if it's hybrid, they're going to communicate it. They're going to let you know up front. It will probably come up in the interview process. But just know that, you know, they have the hybrid for a reason, where they want to have you form relationships in person with the team. And if you ask me questions during the interview process around that, you could be eliminated through the process as well. So it's not something to ask a hiring manager. If it's really important to you, I would definitely suggest going to human resources and asking them, you know, what are their policies? You know, many cases most companies are starting to put it as part of their benefit package, or kind of a Q&A as well. So some of these questions you'll want to ask HR, because they want to fill the job, right, with the right person. But sometimes if you ask too many of these questions to the hiring manager, you could be completely eliminated through the process. Some of the most common questions that you also should be prepared for are: what are your weaknesses? Why should we hire you? Why do you want to work here? What are your goals? Why did you leave, or why are you leaving your job? And here, this is why I'm going to send this to everyone. I found this great article. It's kind of hard to see the text right there, but when you click on it, it will take you to 100 top interview questions, which is fantastic. It will help you definitely prepare. Some final tips and resources, and then we can get on to questions as well. But final tips, definitely be strategic with your career. Think about what you want, what type of company you want to work for, the culture of the organization, what kind of hiring manager, but also more importantly, what type of opportunity is going to work best for your personal life as well. Because if you could have a great job, but if it's impeding on your personal life or your family life, you're not going to be happy in the long run. So really take the time to document what you're looking for, what's important to you, what's going to work with your family life. And then as you interview or apply to jobs, go back to that list. And if there's something that's not going to work out, you know, regretfully decline to move forward, because I cannot even stress this enough that you're not going to be happy in the long run if you take something that's not going to work well. Always prepare, always do your research, always go through the process of thinking about different interview questions before you get there. I've prepped so many candidates, even individuals going for CXO level positions, and it's really important to take the time to look at the job description, look at the company, look online to see what others are saying about the organization, and really think about the questions you want to ask, so you know that you're really interviewing that opportunity. It's going to be the opportunity is going to match what you're looking for a new role as well. Follow up with a thank you letter. And I get a lot of questions on this because, you know, back in the day, it used to be snail mail, right? And a lot of companies or individuals will ask, well, I don't have the person's email address. What should I do? Should I reach out to them on LinkedIn or what have you? It's really important to, I'm going to get to the next bullet point, don't circumvent the process. Okay, so if you don't have the hiring manager's email address, don't try to hunt it down. It's always best to send the thank you letter through the person who organized the interview, because they will forward it on to them. If you circumvent the process or try to reach out to them or try to do something else, I've seen candidates be declined through the process because they were viewed as going around an avenue, right? And if they see you doing that, it could set off alarms that you might come into the organization and circumvent the process. That's not always the case. It's probably maybe 5%, but why take the chance, right? So I always recommend to send a thank you letter to whoever organized the interview, and your thank you letter should clearly communicate, you know, your genuine interest in the role, why you think you're a fit, what you bring to the table, highlight things that you spoke about during the interview, and that you look forward to moving forward in the process and you're excited to hear back from them. So again, make sure that, and don't be worried. I would suggest sending it out the day of or the following day, but you can do it via email. And again, follow that whoever set up the interview as well. And then I think we have just a couple more. Yes. And again, I can't stress this enough. Be positive, be opportunistic. Think about when you schedule your day and you're scheduling your job search, think about the number of people you reach out to. Keep on, and LinkedIn is fantastic because you can continue to network through there as well. And be you, be authentic, be genuine. If everyone was the same, it'd be awfully boring. So if you're passed on an interview or passed in the process, don't take it personally. That opportunity was probably not going to be the best one for you. So again, just keep a positive mindset and keep on being you, and take the opportunity to highlight your uniqueness and personal brand on LinkedIn and as you network. Some quick resources. Like I said, make sure you go through LinkedIn, network through the certification bodies, a lot of industry organizations like the DRI, Continuity Insights. If you're not a part of a local association, I cannot stress this enough, join a local association because they always post opportunities via their group, and they will share those opportunities first with the group. And if they know you and they form a relationship with you, they're going to want to try to help you. So ACP is a large, has many chapters across the US, but there's also so many others, Burma, Burpa, there's countless. So if you're not sure which association to go to, definitely reach out to me, I can help you. We also post, again, BC Management technically doesn't exist as an organization anymore, but I post a lot of YouTube videos on there, some running videos, but there is specifically a playlist for job seekers. So definitely go check that out as well. And our career alerts, I cannot stress this enough, so important to subscribe to. Again, I wish I could guarantee employment. Unfortunately, I can't. I'm at the mercy of the companies first opening the opportunity, but then also engaging us to help them fill the job. So typically once a company posts a job, they're going to try to fill it on their own. They'll share on LinkedIn. They'll do everything they can to try to fill the job without engaging me, because once a company engages me, they pay a fee to me once I fill the job. Candidates never pay my fee, the companies do. But if you are subscribed to our career alerts, you would get notified immediately once we post a new job to our website. You would get that notification if it could be a potential match. But then via that system, you do get a monthly email on all of our activities. But not only that, you get a candidate article, and you also get anything new about our research. I'm going to end here. We do have a 2023 compensation report that's available for you to download. It's complimentary to everyone, so go look it up. It's not just compensation, it's also understanding how your skill sets compare to your peers. What percent are certified? What percent have spoken at a conference? What percent have activated during a crisis? So those little things also give you a gauge on how your skills compare to your peer group as well. Our 2024 compensation report is about to be published. I'm working on it now. You can still participate in that study, because those who participate in the study, they get a customized data set. And the data set is either customized by years of experience or by job title. So the report's great, but it's a global report. If you participate, you get the data set for US respondents only. And you also get the data customized by job title or by years of experience. So then within your peer group, you can see what percent are certified. What should I be looking for compensation? So great things to think about. And here I'm going to wrap it up and end with my contact information. I'm sure there's always questions that are kind of more personal, because it is, thinking about your career search. So if you have any questions, you definitely reach out to me. I encourage you to also follow me so you can see some of the running videos I do. And I don't know if we have time to take any questions now, Keith, or not, but
yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much for your presentation, Cheyenne. You hit on so many great key points. I think that this is very insightful for a lot of people who are transitioning. And I personally just have two quick questions for you, because this comes up with a lot of candidates who are transitioning. Enterprise risk is always something that is kind of a gray area for a lot of people. They think maybe BC and enterprise risk are one and the same, and in some industries they could be. But do you want to talk a little bit about that so they understand if if they're putting enterprise risk on their resume, what that might entail, or what are some of the questions, or maybe some of those areas that they could go down?
So that's a great question, and you're right, because so many companies will call this different. They'll use different terms, right? When you think about enterprise risk management, I think about it's a larger scale than just this business continuity, because sometimes enterprise risk can be looking at financial risk, typically non-financial risk, but sometimes it can even borderline on financial risk for the organization as well. You also will look, it will be more about governance, risk, and controls, GRC too. So something to consider. But I suggest that if you have a background in enterprise risk, definitely put it on there and be ready to speak to it. But if you have not truly done risk management, then I would definitely suggest to steer away from that and keep the skill sets that you have as far as your background. Also, I see enterprise risk can sometimes encompass an overarching umbrella over many, many disciplines outside of just business continuity or DR. It also can encompass third-party risk management. It can also encompass sometimes even getting into some of the cybersecurity, physical security. So it just depends on the organization, because every industry is different, from financial to manufacturing. Manufacturing will tend to encompass more physical security, right? Where financial industry sector will tend to encompass more third-party risk management, and sometimes even more of that kind of financial risk as well. It's a loaded question. So the industry definitely comes into play, but I always suggest if you truly haven't done enterprise risk management, I would suggest highlighting more resilience management. Okay, because I think that falls under umbrella more, and I think of resilience management as truly anything business continuity, DR, crisis management, supplier resiliency, depending on the industry, third-party resiliency. But again, it changes from industry to industry too.
Yeah, and I also last question for me, and I'll give everybody else the opportunity to ask questions. But the big question that comes up all the time with so many candidates is BC software. You have Fusion, Infinite Blue, CL Digital, the list goes on and on and on. So many employers want to understand what is your experience with that BC software. And a lot of military members coming out don't have that experience, and they're trying to figure out, how do I get my foot in the ground? And my advice to them is tell them, hey, I ran BIAs with an Excel document. I can do this from the ground up. Really, these software versions is really a data repository. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, about 90% of my companies, if they do use a software tool, they're not as concerned about you having experience in that specific tool, or even a tool to begin with, right? Usually they're more concerned about your actual experience and going through the process and the BIA and exercising a plan or program, responding to a crisis. They're more concerned about that than the actual tool knowledge, because you can be trained. Many of those providers have free training for you to become accustomed to using the tool and what it does, and generating the reports, and to your point, the repository of the data. Typically, if they want you to have really in-depth experience on the tool, it's usually more of an entry level position, because you're doing more of the data entry, you're running the reports and what have you. So typically, most of the companies I work with are not as concerned about having specific tool knowledge, but you have these other hard skills that you bring to the table.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions going around the room? On everybody all at once. Larry, you got a question there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks, Cheyenne, for doing this for us. I appreciate it. My question was, is there certain times of the year that these contract jobs come out, or any time frames, or is it just kind of first come, first serve?
Great question. So I've been recruiting for over 20 years, 25 years. Typically, the best time of the year to look for a job is right between like late February, early March, all the way until around June. Things slow down around the summer, and then they tend to pick up around August up until right before Thanksgiving. So the holidays do slow down. and the summer slows down to some degree as well. This right now, it's an election year, so I've always had a dip in my business during an election year because companies, especially if they're in an industry that has a lot of regulation or policies, it could change depending on who's voted in or what party or what have you. It can, if they're very conservative, they will tend to hold off or cut back a little bit on their hiring, and then they'll bring in more contractors because if they definitely need to get something done, they may not commit to that permanent hire. And instead they'll bring in a consultant or contractor to help get them, get some of the tasks done until they feel better about committing to a full-time permanent hire. So just something to keep in mind. People usually don't know about that, but it does. And it's funny right now because our data shows that the demand is still very high for this industry because not only COVID, but you think about supply chain resiliency, third-party risk, what's going on with DRI, the shift to more of a holistic resilience approach, right? And then you're also thinking about the cyber piece as well as all the companies trying to update their very archaic systems. So even though it's more technology focused with cyber and the applications and systems, that's still transitioning, hiring people on the governance side to make sure that the ITDR maps to what they need from a resilience management business continuity. So all these things are coming into play where the demand has spiked and it hasn't really stopped, but it will be very telling in the next month or two because of an election year. I think it's going to plateau, but it's not going to dip like other industries. So if you think about a lot of people are being let go because they're in IT technology. So that's definitely dipped. And then poorly managed companies, poorly financially managed companies, they've been having layoffs as well. And then a lot of conservative companies, they'll pause on hiring and they'll look at more of the contract consultants because of the election year.
Hey, Chris, you have a question?
Yes, Cheyenne, thank you very much for doing this. Let me put down my hand so I can just pull it down as well. There's a couple things that I want to discuss, and you sort of danced around it, but I think the biggest piece is you did say don't put everything out there on your resume, because one of the big things is you may have all these certificates of training, all this background stuff, and you put it out there on the LinkedIn and you put it out there on your resume. Then they're going to immediately say you're just overqualified. Give them what they need to hear, maybe a little bit more, just so they go, ooh, that's a bite that we like. We like to see that. Then you can update that. So you might have to change your LinkedIn profile. You might have to change your resumes 5 or 10 different times. Those are things to be looked at constantly, because if you put too much out there, then you're just overqualifying yourself. Like I tell people, if you're going for a doctorate degree and they don't ask for a doctorate, don't put down doctorate. Don't put anything down that you're going for a doctorate degree. Some of them just say we need a bachelor's. You know what? You could probably put a master's and be good with it, and they'd be like, oh, that's not bad. That's extra 2 years of study. We get it. The other piece is that a lot of people don't understand how they fit into the industry. Could you sort of explain that from a perspective of coming from a military mindset, which I know Keith has talked about this time and time again, but when you look at a new person and you say, you got a hold of me, because Cheyenne, you and I worked together at one time, you were able to say, okay, let me see what you got. We see how you fit into this industry. This is what you can do. This is how you would work that process. Could you explain that, please?
So definitely someone coming from the public sector, they really value that hands-on crisis management expertise. They also value the fact that that situational awareness, always having to think outside of the box. They also value that you don't get as agitated as someone else who may get overly agitated or after something that just happened, right? You're more even keel. So I think that brings a lot to the table, and that's where I've been successful in placing people coming from the public sector into the private sector, because they really, really value those core skills, competencies, or it really comes down to kind of approach, right? Because when you're doing crisis management and something's happening, eyes are on you, right? And how you're able to professionally conduct yourself, communicate across the organization, and really tapping into that expertise. And obviously you're not going to be able, you typically don't have experience managing every different type of crisis, right? That's unheard of. But just having that understanding and previous experience doing, multiple different crises here and there, that's a lot more than other people that have been in corporate America typically, because they're more on the governance side. Okay, so crisis management wasn't even a thing until probably, well, maybe 10, 15 years ago. I think I placed my first crisis manager, but I was like, what is this? I don't even understand what this is. So I think you really need to lean on that. Now, there are a lot of jobs that are out there, depending on the size of the organization, where it can be both business continuity and crisis management. You're doing both because of the size of the organization, or maybe it could be the lack of maturity with the program too. Crisis communications is a big thing. Being able to work, if you've ever had any global experience as well, it's huge. That doesn't imply that you move to a different country and work there for a certain amount of time, but if you've had any global experience through your public sector work, that's huge. And but they do, and it's interesting because I think people always think that they don't have something that someone else wants. And even my candidates who are consultants, if they work for PwC or Kyndryl, or they have the consulting experience, I have companies that won't hire a consultant, but I have other companies that love consultants. So it's funny because it's so easy to get tied into, well, I may not have everything that they want, or I may not have this experience. Again, be positive and think about what you do truly bring to the table and highlight that expertise. Don't get lost in what you may not have.
Thank you.
Excellent points. All right, it looks like we're coming up on the last minute. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up? I just want to say thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Cheyenne, for coming on here and speaking to everybody. This was just a great, great session.
It's good. It's so good seeing so many familiar names and faces too. I wish we could all be in person, but thank goodness for all the technology. We can do more of these.
For sure.
Well, forever in California, we'll go running with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Kylie's like, not me.
I'll try to do one today where I'm like, yeah.
No longer a condition of employment.
All right.
Very good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
Take care. All right, bye.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Chris. Oh, by the way,